There's a bunch of crazy stories written by the Brothers Grimm. And now you're gonna learn all about them, listening to the Brothers Dim.
Students and scholars, friends and relations, welcome to the Brothers Dim podcast, a podcast in which we have a semi-scholarly look at the primary work of the Brothers Grimm, collection of fairy tales collected in the early 1800s in Germany called Kinder- und Hausmärchen, or Grimm's Fairy Tales, including this week's tale, story number 68, The Thief and His Master. My name is Phil.
And my name is Mike.
Mike, how are you now?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm good. I was wondering if you've ever stolen anything. Doesn't have to be as grand as when our friend Tyler stole a car at age 10.
The only thing I can think of, and this has haunted me my entire life, and it's stupid, but it had to have been like 11, and my brother was 8, and I was walking past their room, and they had just like a stash of money hanging out like right by the door, and I grabbed $1 and pocketed it, and it has haunted me my entire life.
Did you ever come clean?
I think I did, and I think he refused to take $1 back.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yeah.
I'll tell this story. I had an incident when I worked at the grocery store in Hadley, Massachusetts.
Tales of Teenage Dirtbaggery.
But I worked at the grocery store for like 2 weeks, and at some point, I just stopped showing up and got a job at Radio Shack next door. And then one day, like a month later, they call and they say, I have a paycheck. So I go in, and my old boss calls me over, and he says, Phil, I need to talk to you. Thought I was going to get yelled at for just leaving him in the lurch. But instead, we go up to the office, and he says, Phil, you have not been clocking out at night. And he says, I know you've actually been working.
True.
That's true. That's true. He's like, I know you've actually been working extra hours. I say, yeah. And he says, well, I'm sorry, but we can't pay you for the overtime unless you actually clock out. And so I paused, and I said, okay, that's fair. Sorry, boss, I will try to do better. And then I left, and I opened the paycheck, and it was for like $700.
Which was a lot of money in 1998.
It was a lot of money. And I just took the money. I don't know necessarily that I felt bad, but I also didn't know I wasn't sure how much responsibility I had in not cashing the paycheck.
For how long did you worry that somebody was going to figure it out and come back to you and charge you $700 that was never yours to begin with?
I didn't cash the check for a while. And then I called maybe a week later and I said, I quit because I was scared of doing it again.
Yeah. I would have lived in fear that $700 was going to get reclaimed at some point. And, losing $700 wasn't going to ruin me for life.
Yeah.
One day I would have gone, I can breathe a little bit easier now.
I don't even know that corporation exists. Radio Shack certainly doesn't exist.
That's true. Was this Big Y?
I don't remember. It was whatever grocery store I worked at.
Actually, I once stole a case of Ham's beer from the Liquors 44 in Hadley because it was on the bottom rack of the cart, and we had a whole bunch of shit. And when we went to check out, we just didn't realize it was there underneath. But yeah, we got out to the parking lot. We're like, oh.
Well, I didn't steal intentionally, I don't think. Someone said, here's your check.
Is it really theft?
And all that I did was cash the check. But anyways, rather unlike this tale, Mike, would you be so kind then? Would you take us through the plot of Grimm, story number 68, The Thief and His Master?
Indeed. So, Hans is a man with a problem. He wants his son to learn a trade, but instead of making a decision, he goes to church to pray for guidance. The clerk ducks behind the altar and says, thieving, thieving. And so Hans goes home and tells his son that God wants him to learn to be a thief. Off they go. They go to find a tutor in thieving. Eventually in the forest, they come across a little house with an old woman. They ask if she knows a master thief. She says, sure, her son's a master thief. So they talk to him and he agrees to take on the boy. The price is that if Hans does not recognize his son in a year's time, then it'll cost $200. If he does recognize him, then it's free. Off Hans goes, and the boy learns all manner of thievery and witchcraft, which I guess go hand in hand.
Sure,
So, as the end of this year-long contract is nearing, Hans is worried. He's worried sick because he sure as fuck hasn't done anything smart like saving those $200 in case he needed to pay for it. Now he's trying to figure out, if this fails, where's he going to get the money? A dwarf sees him in consternation and asks him what's wrong. Hans explains the situation. The dwarf tells him to bring a basket of bread with him, and when he arrives, place it on the hearth. Above that is a basket with his son as a bird in it. And so Hans is like, okay.
Okay, to clarify, the dwarf said, put a basket of bread on the hearth and your son is going to be sitting on top of said hearth disguised as a bird.
Yeah. So Hans does so. He shows up with a basket of bread. Bird pops his head out. And his son is pleased to see him. The master thief is very upset. He accuses him of cheating and having been informed by the devil himself. The son's all like, oh, let's just go home, Dad. On the way home, there's a fancy carriage approaching on the road. The son proposes they swindle the man inside. He changes himself into a large greyhound. And as the carriage approaches, the man calls out, says, How much do you want for the dog? And Hans replies, oh, $30. The guy says, well, that's a bit much, but it's a very fine dog, so I'll take it anyway. Makes $30 off the dog. They go on a little ways down the road. Son jumps out of the carriage, runs back to the dad, turns back into a kid, and they go on their merry way, a little bit richer than before. The next day, there's a fair in the neighboring town. The son hatches another plan. He's going to change into a horse, and Hans can take him to the fair and sell him. The son warns Hans, though, that he's going to have to take the bridle off or he'll be stuck as a horse. Hans manages to easily sell the horse for $100 and to no other than the master thief himself. Of course, Hans forgets to take off the bridle, and so the son is stuck as a horse. Back at the master thief's house, the maid goes into the stable, and the horse says, take off my bridle. And for what has to be the first time in grim history, she's like, holy shit, a talking horse. She takes the bridle off. Son changes into a sparrow and flies for the door. The master thief changes himself into a bird also, and he gives pursuit. They get together and cast lots. The master loses, so he changes himself to water and is a fish. The son changes into a fish also, for reasons unknown. They cast lots again. The master loses again, so he changes into a cock, and the son changes into a fox and bites his head off. To this very day, he is still dead. The end. There's a fair amount of no reason in particular in this one.
Yeah. Do you have a grade?
I was in like the A- B+ range. It's wacky and weird and has almost no point, but I liked it, and I'm not sure why.
I gave it a C.
Huh.
I thought it was a really
Fair.
strong start. It was one of the best first 3 paragraphs of a grim story.
It's not bad for a 5-paragraph story.
Master thief training and some wizardry a little bit, and then it just falls apart.
It's kind of D&D. I want to be a rogue, Dad.
Do you have a moral?
Oh God, I could not pull a moral out of this if it saved my life.
Here's what I got. If you owe someone money because they taught your kid exactly what you wanted them to teach your kid,
and did it well.
If at the end of a year you don't want to pay them, just fuck them over. Have your kid who had just been lovingly taught by this guy, but have your kid kill him. But definitely don't pay him for the guitar lessons or the karate lessons or whatever. By all means, keep going back to the well. And then if you're the other moral is if you're in a transformation war, do not turn into a chicken.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
Every version of that part of this story, that's how you die. Turn into a bird or a chicken or something like that, and then a fox bites your head off.
Yeah. I couldn't help but feel that the acid kicked in right around when the son ends up back at the thief's house as a horse.
Yeah.
It's just going along mostly, and then it's like, oh, he turns into a bird. And the master turns into a bird, and they fight and they cast lots, and then master turns into a fish, and I guess the other kid turns into a fish too. And then turns into a chicken. Kid turns into a fox and bites his head off. The end.
That bit I get. I know cast lots I wasn't sure about.
I had to go look this one up.
Okay, tell me.
So I'm very familiar with the phrase, and I have a general idea what it means. So it's also called claromancy.
Okay.
It's the process of randomizing a decision, but attributing it to the will of God or some divine power. So this is a quote I saw is, God allowed the Israelites to cast lots in order to determine his will for a given situation.
So a roll of the dice, but that you say there's 6 different possibilities, 6 different roads we can go down. And then whatever it lands on isn't chance.
Yeah, it's God's way of telling us. I'm probably going to be busy that day, so if I'm not around, flip a coin, and whatever it lands on is what I wanted it to land on, okay? Are we cool?
Yeah. It's the will of God that my old boss at the grocery store. I found the original story, by the way, which makes a lot more sense, yes. And I don't know would you like to hear a quick synopsis?
Yeah, please.
Okay. In the original story, the boy got a job as an assistant to a wizard. That right off the bat, none of this thievery stuff. But the wizard says, okay, do you know how to read? And the boy's like, yeah. And the wizard says, no sale. I can't have you read my... Okay, and then it says like, oh, actually, what I meant to say was no. And the wizard's like, great, then come with me, boy. I will give you a job. And then the boy reads the wizard books on the sly. And then the wizard gets pissed off.
What are you doing? It looks like you're reading.
No.
Just looking at the pictures.
Wasn't Jordan Catalano, who famously couldn't read
I don't remember that plot arc,
It was
but I
only
don't
like,
remember much of that, to be honest.
for anyone listening, 30 odd years ago.
Jared Leto couldn't read.
Yeah. So the wizard finds out. Wizard's pissed. Boy escapes, and then the wizard goes after him, and they have a wizard duel, and that's what the animal stuff is.
All right. Makes a
Um,
little more sense.
Boy learning on the sly kind of makes sense instead of specifically going to wizard thief school.
Forbidden knowledge.
Yeah, I've seen that scenario a couple of different times in a couple, like the animal thing, the wizard turning into animals, and
Yeah.
almost classic trope, right? It's how you beat King's Quest V. You have the
Spoilers.
animal- 30 odd years ago, folks, there was a video game. And at the end, the evil wizard, who's the brother of the wizard that you had killed in King's Quest 3, he turns into fire, so you summon a rain cloud.
It's clever of them to skip a game, so you think the matter's settled. I was thinking it was like a Die Hard 3 kind of situation.
I think, well, also, but maybe they were like, we can do this wizard thing better. But anyways, yeah. Speaking of which, actually, that was also the plot of King's Quest 3 was you were the wizard's apprentice. You have to learn magic on the sly, but if he catches you, he kills you. The game was very hard because he would just, it was like a random number generator whenever you walk into a room. Like there was a 1 in 100 chance or something that he just shows up and he's like, what's all this then? And they're like, oh, you should have saved more.
I was just gonna say, I hope you saved your game.
Now that those games, once you know the order, it takes like 10 minutes to play. Also, was it the end of the movie Willow?
I don't remember almost anything of Willow except for Warwick Davis and Val Kilmer.
Yeah, rest in peace,
God-
Mad Mardigan.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, there was also Once and Future King. I don't know if you ever saw that.
No.
Merlin comes to the King Arthur
Yeah.
guy as a kid, and he's like, "I got to teach you some stuff because you're gonna be king one day, son." And then he
Sorry.
walks around. He's like, "Yeah, no, it's okay." And then Arthur walks around going like, "You motherfuckers! You said I wouldn't be nothing, but now I'm pulling this sword from a stone, and look at me now. I'm a king." One other thing I thought was good: the dog scam is a decent scam.
Yeah, that one was pretty good. He didn't there was no bridle in that one. Why didn't they just stick with that?
He
Maybe.
was like, you can't wear clothes. You can't wear the clothes of the animal that you've turned into, or else you get stuck that way. I don't know about the bridle. They were like, we can do this scam better. We got $30 for a dog, a fine dog. Imagine what we could get for a whole horse. Thief wizard, he buys the horse for $100, brings it back. The girl's shocked at this talking horse.
But lives with a wizard who turns
That lives
into
with
birds.
I'm like, this is the one, you were joking earlier. This is the one girl that should not be surprised by a talking animal. Because this is like the only power this wizard seems to really have.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even thought of it that way. You're right.
And she's like, oh, I've never seen such a thing. She's like, well,
You'd think she'd probably know the kid too.
You can't read, can you? No. And you're stupid, right? Maybe she's the new one. Yeah. Maybe she's the replacement.
Oh, maybe. Do you think the master thief knew that the horse was the kid? Or was he just buying a horse for the hell of it?
There's nothing textually that supports that. I thought that's where they were going. And
Yeah,
I was
but
like,
it's-
okay, you're pulling me back in. We're bouncing back up to a B.
But the dad had gone to pick up the son literally the day before. This was the next day at the fair of the town over.
Yeah. Which,
And I've never seen it before in my life.
I'll be a horse of a different color. Also, the dad, speaking of like tropes that I was thinking about tropes that I see appear a lot in, I don't know, a certain type of sitcom.
Like Friends?
Maybe not Friends. It definitely appeared in New Girl once. And there's some other things too, where like, okay, so you've got kind of dirtbag with a heart of gold character, and then you meet that dirtbag with a heart of gold's dad, and he's like a con artist. That happened on Scrubs once, I think. That's what this kid's father reminds me of. Like, as soon as he gets the kid back, haven't seen you in a year. We got to start scamming.
Oh, no, it was the kid's idea, though.
Oh, you're right.
The kid was like, hey, watch this.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I read was talking about how the dad is completely unable to form an opinion of his own. Like he has to ask God what his kid should do for a living. The dwarf is the only one who can help him. Do you think the dwarf is the devil, or is it just a dwarf?
I think it's just a dwarf.
When is a dwarf just a dwarf?
I like the idea of the dwarf being the devil, though.
Well, I mean,
And that
he
the
did
devil
know
does-
exactly what the situation was and how to help.
No, that's true. And he knew how to beat it. And like in the end, the one wizard died. Maybe that was. It's like, now you're a part of my army.
Yeah, maybe it was his like arch rival.
Mike, though, do you have any other notes? I'm kind of out on this because it was a very short story.
Yeah, not a lot out there. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else.
Okay. If you don't, I do have a pitch
Ooh, what do you
that
got?
Hooray for Hollywood!
One of my great dreams in life, Mike, would be to finish the Foundation story by Isaac Asimov. I don't know if you know that story.
I read one of them, and I don't think
Okay.
it was the first one.
Okay. So here's how the main crux of the story goes for
Okay.
Foundation. We've populated the whole galaxy, and the galaxy is about to collapse. This one guy has figured it out. He's like, I know the whole system's going to collapse, and we're going to fall into a million years of
Not goodness.
darkness. This is not goodness. He's like, but figured out all the math. If I do things in a very specific order and set things up and put a couple of things in motion, then we can just shrink that time that everything's all fucked up down to 1,000 years. Okay? They go and they become, merchants for a little while, and that takes 70 years. And then because they're merchants, they're moving stuff around, and then they get science in, and then there's this other foundations. All this sort of stuff happens. But then 500 years then in the story goes by across 3 or 4 books. So they're only really halfway done, left on a huge goddamn cliffhanger. And like so much George R.R. Martin, Asimov just fucking refused to finish this story and did a bunch of prequels instead. And then he died. We might get Winds of Winter, but I don't think we're getting Dream of Spring, man. I don't think it's going to happen. But anyways, okay, so story leaves off 500 years into this thing with the robot Caliban. He decides he's going to turn the universe into one gigantic sentient being called Galaxia, and we're all going to be part of it, this hippie-ass version of the Borg, or Unity from Rick and Morty. I thought maybe Asimov wrote himself into a corner, like so much George R.R. Martin. Although George R.R. Martin, he's got an easy-ass corner to get himself out of. For Game of Thrones, just, all right, everyone's all scattered, can bring them back together, go kill the fucking zombies, go kill Cersei,
Yeah,
and then kill the dragons.
scatter again.
And then rebuild, yeah.
Yeah.
Then everyone goes back to their own town.
Yeah.
For Foundation, I would call this next chapter, though, we get back to the story. So they want to do a hippie version of the Borg. I would call the story The Plague Doctors, in which we treat the Borgism, as it were, the disease, the way we would treat any other plague. Get some nice visuals with the masks or whatever, and send in a robot assassin made of nanobot gray matter, like some sort of super weapon that tracks down, finds where Caliban is, find how he's doing this whole thing, and then have a series of fights where the nanobot has to keep transforming maybe and adapting till it gets to the planet, and then just Grey Goose the planet whole, like a white blood cell killing any other virus. To tie it in, if we want, we can have that robot be trained by a hacker. Been arrested, has the correct temperament to train something which will end up killing billions, but doesn't have the empathy for them the same way we don't have an empathy for a virus in our bodies, and so you save the cancer, save the future of the human. Maybe you did kill a million or billions of people, but you're saving hundreds of billions. So that's how I would continue on the next part of Foundation, which I admit that might be confusing to anyone that doesn't have 7 books of very, very hard sci-fi for that to make any sense. But I feel, if for our very few listeners, if any of you have read Foundation, this is a fantastic goddamn pitch. I have solved this problem.
I like it.
So you're welcome, Isaac Asimov fans that wanted to see it finished.
When you first said that your life's goal is to finish the Foundation series, I thought you meant finish reading. I didn't realize you meant finish writing. I didn't realize it was unfinished.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, on a huge cliffhanger, they were like, so I guess we're going to do the Borg thing? They were like, show enough. Bye. I hope it works out for us. And then that's it. And then, then they do 2 goddamn prequels.
To retcon the Borg?
Oh, they're nowhere even fucking near that. The 2 prequels are just dealing with that initial mathematician and his fucking politics at the university. And then they make a goddamn TV show about it, and the prequels are the thing that they zero in on. I'm like, no.
They can't do the other stuff.
We can't.
It's
they
not
were
finished.
Like, it was so dumb. I was so mad because I thought this is genius, because the only way you could really do Foundation properly would be like kind of an anthology. Like, meaning all of the people that were in the previous chapter that did whatever they needed to do, like they're gone.
Yeah,
they're maybe they are very old. That people know about them because they did this huge thing,
right?
But they're dead. So it's this new generation. It's not even like these are our sons.
Completely different people.
Just
Same
completely
setting.
different people, different part of the
Yeah.
galaxy in some cases, but that is all that I have. And you said you did not have anything else either, right?
I got nothing.
Okay, well, Mike, are there places where people could find us if they were looking for us?
Absolutely. You can always find us in all of the episodes at brothersdim.com. Plus, we're on Blue Sky at brothersdim.
Wonderful. Well, we would love to remind you to subscribe to us if you like listening to our nonsense. Please share and enjoy the Brothers Dim with all of your friends. And to all of our friends and relations, thanks for listening. Sleep tight, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.